since I've covered all the more grindy and detailed bits of the game, it's time to talk about something I've kind of alluded to several times, but now it's time to go over it in more detail. This time, we're going to be going over Ultimate difficulty and the differences that this brings to the table. And let me tell you, they're a lot more significant than the differences you'll see in Hard and Very Hard. If you're loading up Episode 1 or Episode 4 for the first time in Ultimate, the first thing you'll actually end up noticing is that the lobby itself is actually looking fairly different. You can actually see the clouds outside the window, showing that Pioneer 2 has probably come out of orbit and is actually a lot closer to the actual surface of Regal. As a result, the actual lighting inside is quite a bit different. Also, I might have recorded this sometime in October, can you tell? There's gonna be pumpkins everywhere. Episode 1 receives the biggest overhaul by far in Ultimate. All four of the areas have been kind of readjusted in one way or another, usually through either lighting or kind of palette swaps. Gets a slightly different atmosphere for the same areas. The other big thing is that the vast majority of the enemies have been completely changed in terms of their models. The actual behavior of them tends to be very similar, with like one or two differences here and there, but overall, they're a lot tougher than they used to be. I mean, just compare the movement speed of these Bartles compared to the Boomas we saw way back in the Forest 1 video. Everything in Ultimate goes pretty fast, so you're gonna have to actually stay on your toes and actually manage to deal with large groups when they get in your face. One of the more frequent changes in Ultimate difficulty is statuses, and just what sort of status an enemy will apply to you. For example, when you get stung by the new version of the mobs, they'll usually actually cause slow instead of poison. It's kind of those subtle things that it will make things more difficult because, let's face it, poison was barely even a status. You need the lowest level of anti to get rid of it, and droids are just completely immune to it. So usually they'll kind of pack the much more bothersome ones. This change for statuses even includes adding statuses to attacks that didn't have them before. Such as, if you get pounced by the new versions of the wolves, sometimes you'll actually get slowed. Or if you get pounced by the Gulgus U, the leader of the wolves, it can actually paralyze you as long as you're not a droid. So keep these things in mind, since there'll occasionally be a status that comes up that you really didn't expect there to be in the first place. Spells that an enemy can cast often change in Ultimate difficulty as well. For example, the breath that actually shot out Foy from the Hildebears has changed completely. Now it shoots out Jazond, which is incredibly annoying, because now it can actually cause shock. So if you like to be dealing with the biggest enemy in Forest while constantly running around unable to do anything, then yeah, these guys are massive jerks. If you happen to have a Cure Shock unit, make sure to bring it with you whenever you go to Forest. Or at the very least, make sure to bring it if you're going on a Forest quest that has a lot of these jerks. They're not too difficult to take down, but in numbers, or when dealing with a lot of enemies at the same time, you can get stun-locked pretty bad from shock. Either that or bring some soul atomizers or something so you can get rid of the status more quickly. There's another major thing to talk about with Ultimate difficulty that really can make it a huge pain in the ass. As you're going up the difficulty levels, you'll probably even notice it kind of inching towards this too, so it shouldn't be too surprising when you actually get there and it's exactly as expected. But at the same time, it causes a lot of trouble. What I'm referring to is your invincibility period. It's basically gone in Ultimate. You'll just get smacked again and again and again with no chance of recovery. This is one of the biggest changes in Ultimate, because it means that if something doesn't knock you down outright, you can get just bonked around until you're completely dead in no time. And considering the threshold for getting knocked down is 25% of your health, if you run into a bunch of enemies that take off like 20% of it, it's just like, smack! You're just dead. You better hope one of them actually lands a critical hit, because if not, then you're just going down. With how fast the enemies start moving, especially in multiplayer on Ultimate, it's not too difficult to get yourself cornered if you're not being careful. And if you get cornered by even like 2 or 3 basic slappies, you're probably dead. Because while you can hit one of them, the other one's gonna smack you in the face and then cause you to go into hit stun. So yeah, Ultimate is gonna be a place where you die very suddenly, very often. Especially when you're first learning it, so be extra careful and do try to fight things at a distance if you're not confident with dealing with groups of enemies close up. It can be a bit of an adventure. This also causes even more trouble due to another problem. One of the biggest problems you'll face when you're playing through Ultimate is passing certain HP thresholds in regards to certain attacks. Because there are certain attacks that once you pass that threshold and you stop getting knocked down by them, you will get absolutely nuked by them in the future until you get a few more levels to give yourself some buffer. One of the easiest examples of this are Baran's missiles. Oh my god, Baran's missiles. Once you have enough HP to not get knocked down by those, you are gonna die and die and die. There's almost no way around it unless you're very, very careful with dealing with them. So yeah, it's like you no longer get down and get knocked down by them, and you don't have a grace period of invulnerability. So you get hit by 5 missiles from that huge cluster they fire out, and you're just dead. Solo play can get pretty rough due to all the different things that are honestly pretty cheap in Ultimate Difficulty. I'm not gonna cut any corners. The game gets pretty damn cheap. Thankfully, there's not too much punishment for dying, and if it's a mission where you're allowed to drop telepipes wherever you want, you can just keep on placing one at the entrance of every room you go through if you think you're gonna die. This will make it so you'll quickly get revived, go back down to the telepipe, and you're right back to where you were. Now, there are certain quests where you can't use telepipes, and for those, I'd probably recommend bringing like 2 or 3 friends if you can, just so you can get through it without too much difficulty, and so there's somebody to get your ass off the ground when you inevitably get one shot. Speaking of instantaneous death, let's talk about one of the enemies in Ultimate that everybody loves to hate. The Ob Lily! You can kind of see it over there, it's the yellow flower. This is the new version of the Poison Lily, and instead of just shooting balls that poison you, it shoots balls of Megan, or Megid, or however you want to pronounce it. The big thing with that spell is, it kills you instantaneously! And you can see the distance at which these things can shoot. So every single time you see these guys spawn into the room, if you can kill them immediately, okay. If you can keep them stunned, okay. But another thing to keep in mind at least is that you can shoot them from handgun range safely. These things are a huge pain in the ass for hunters, mainly because if you attack them at close range and they recover from their hit stun, they'll often send out a wave that's actually pretty long range that'll paralyze you. So okay, they're more specifically annoying for any non-droid hunter. Also, they'll do the same thing where if they're almost dead, they'll just, kill themselves off. That said, this happens almost instantaneously now, so if you're standing super close, you'll also get paralyzed. Yay! Also, the Nano Dragon basically doesn't look different at all, or function different at all, so this is a rare case of the AI just being completely the same. Another familiar enemy that's become quite anti-hunter are the Guild Chicks. Yeah, they've gotten a bit of an AI makeover here in Ultimate. I mean, they still do basically the same thing, but now they don't get instantaneously knocked down. You can actually hit them several times and they'll still stand right up. It's actually a % chance of them getting knocked over with every single hit, so sometimes they'll go down right away, other times they won't. And what this means is, unless you want to get your face pummeled in, since they do punch multiple times, I'd heavily recommend sticking to ranged weaponry versus these guys. You can kind of sneak in a couple of sword swings here and there, but it's really quite a pain to try to use melee weapons against them. Another thing is, you really can't take your time with these guys either. If you're sitting in an ideal range for them, they'll just start firing off lasers at you if you're fussing about too much with your positioning. So do try to kill them off as quickly as you can, and really layer on those hits for those bigger chances of them getting knocked over. Rangers with their shotgun weapons are a huge help here, just because they can hit multiple of them at a distance and keep knocking them over for you, so you can get a few free shots in as a hunter. Teamwork! It's kind of important in Ultimate sometimes, even if this is a pretty easy game, and most parties will just completely curb stomp these guys, because they still don't have the most health, as you can see. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to enemy changes in Ultimate difficulty, to be perfectly honest. Some of the enemies have been changed in such a way that they become a lot more aggressive than their original forms were. On top of that, in later episodes, there's some enemies that have had their attacks ramped up in terms of damage so heavily that they will one-shot you no matter how much HP you have. So instead of actually having a chance to not die, like with Megid, you're just dead. Dead, dead, dead. Speaking of, I should clarify that if you want to survive Megid, especially ones from Ob Lilies, just wear a whole bunch of stuff that gives you lots of Dark Elemental resist. That's the one thing that can help with it, and if you're doing a quest that involves hunting down a lot of lilies, it's not such a bad thing to go ahead and load up on the Resist Devil or whatever the highest one happens to be. Or just any other slot unit that you found that's a rare one that'll give you more dark resistance. Because it helps a lot in the long run to not get one-shot constantly. If you're feeling confident, though, you can go without it and proceed to accidentally get shot by Mention every now and then and die. That said, the chances of dying are still possible even with lots of dark resistance, so yeah, how's your luck? There's another thing to bring up when it comes to ultimate difficulty, and higher difficulties in general in this game. There's actually a level cap that you need to reach before you can enter them in the first place, especially online, for example. So normally the level cap for Ultimate Episode 1 is 80. Some servers will actually change this, such as Ultimate here, which ended up bumping it up to 90. There's a reason for this that kind of screwed with enemy stats, but you get the idea. There's actually level caps for each different difficulty. Okay, so the default level caps for each difficulty are level 20 for hard mode, level 40 for very hard mode, and level 80 for ultimate mode. And trust me, that slog from level 40 to 80 can kind of be annoying sometimes, just because the speed in which your level kind of starts to taper off in the 70 to 80 portion. So it's just like, I want to go in, but I can't! So depending on the server that you're on, this grinding session might actually be a little bit longer. That said, most IDs actually have some nice stuff to find on very hard, so you may as well just go looking around for nice stuff instead of worrying about the levels all that much. Now in the offline version of the game, these level caps are not actually there. What matters is whether or not you've completed the final area on a difficulty. So for example, I've actually gotten as far as Ruins in ultimate difficulty at like level 64 or something with a character on the GameCube version. Just because all I did was just use some gear from previous characters and kind of blast their way through all the difficulties. And since I kept on beating the final boss of episode 1 each time, it unlocked the next difficulty for me without having to worry about level caps. That sort of challenge is only possible with offline versions of the game. So yeah, if you want to actually be able to do that, I hope you have a GameCube copy or something laying around, because Blue Burst is never gonna happen. The last thing I want to go over, even the bosses in episode 1 have gotten a makeover, complete with new boss arenas sometimes, such as the dragon here. It has become the Silla Dragon, which, if it isn't obvious just from looking around, it's become Ice Elemental. And let me tell you, that's a huge pain in the ass when you first get into Ultimate. The main catch to the Silla Dragon being Ice Elemental is every little thing it does to you can freeze you. If it touches you, it can freeze you. If it steps on you, it can freeze you. If it catches you with its ice breath, it can freeze you. If it hits you with an ice ball, it can freeze you. If it tackles you when it's underground, it can freeze you. So basically what I'm saying is, be fast with wiggling that joystick left and right, or bring a cure freeze, or you're gonna die. I mean, if you just get into Ultimate, chances are it's gonna step on you twice just like that, and you're gonna die anyways. So, there's a perfectly good example of how quickly you will die when you're at the appropriate level for this boss, as opposed to being heavily overleveled. That said, this boss is still the dragon. It still doesn't have that much HP, and can be taken down pretty quickly with the right weapons. Rangers will have the least trouble with the Silla Dragon, just because all the threat comes from it stepping on you for the most part. But that's it. Rangers are pretty much good at every boss, so that barely counts. Hunter's big thing is that they can do bigger bursts of damage when they get the chance, but that's about it. And even then, with the right weaponry, Rangers can do comparable damage anyways, so yay! Now, the burrowing attack has actually changed somewhat with the Silla Dragon. The third attack now becomes the big old spiral, which funnels its way to the center. I kind of tagged by the tail end of that one there, but yeah. So it just kind of spirals around and around and around until it gets to the very center of the arena, and then just pops out as normal. The attack's honestly pretty easy to dodge regardless. All you do is just bait it to pass behind you, and then just quickly run to the side of the arena. As long as you time it decently correctly, you'll be fine. And there's an example of just not even giving a damn and getting stepped on repeatedly. It's nice when you're at this level of power where you just don't even have to care. Although Cure Free still helps a lot, just because that way you don't have to worry about wiggling the joystick constantly. But yeah, Silla Dragon's still the Silla Dragon, although the amount of damage that you have to do on this particular server is quite a bit higher than it is in the GameCube version of the game, so do keep in mind that certain servers like to tweak enemy statistics. That about does it for Ultimate Difficulty and the changes it brings to the table. There's still plenty more that I didn't really get into, but, you know, I'm not gonna go into that minute of detail. I've already rambled on about Ultimate longer than I thought I already was going to. We're at 15 minutes here! So let's kind of summarize the important things about this. First off, enemies are speed demons now, some more than others. You have no invulnerability period, so you can get just smacked around even by a small group of kind of basic enemies. Enemies hurt. A lot. So expect to get your ass whooped a few times. Attacks that have statuses, and some attacks that didn't before, have been upgraded to have much more annoying statuses. A lot of the spells that enemies can cast have been upgraded to more annoying versions as well. And bosses will kick your ass. And most importantly, you're going to die. A lot. Your face will die, your friends will die, your friends' friends will die. Everybody's gonna die. That's how it works in Ultimate. And once you've learned a few things, you'll die less often. Just how it goes. So yeah, enjoy death. And enjoy learning through death. And drop some telepipes in rooms before where you're going to die. Because you're gonna die. With that though, that pretty much wraps up all the different lessons I can think of for these side videos. Honestly, I've pretty much covered everything that I can really think of. I've been trying to think of other topics, but nothing really springs to mind. I've had a lot of fun with these ones though. It gives me a chance to kind of gush about all the stupid knowledge that I have with this whole game. And I usually have quite a bit of fun talking about it, let's be perfectly honest. If anyone has any specific requests for topics for me to go over in this style though, let me know in the comments. And if it's a topic that I know enough about, or it's actually broad enough, then I might make another video just like these guys for it. With these done, I've decided that the secondary videos for the Phantasy Star Online series are going to focus on quests. These might be story quests, or just specific quests that are rather popular, or ones that people want me to do. Sometimes the homebrew quests as well, to show how different those are, and how more stupid they can get sometimes too, depending on who made them. Stuff like that. There's a lot of kind of interesting quests in this game, and some of them that are just used because they honestly give so much more EXP than the going through the area normal, or there's a whole lot of a certain enemy type, stuff like that. What this basically means is there's going to be a lot more action overall, since both sides of the videos are going to be stages in one form or another. With that though, it's been nice doing these tutorial videos, but it's time to bring them to a close for the time being. Hope you guys enjoyed them, and I'll catch you all next time in whatever stage we are at the moment. Probably Ruins. See you guys there, and thanks for watching!